The winter of 1868 came early to the San Juan Mountains. By late November, snow had buried the high country under 6 feet of white silence, and the temperature dropped so low that spit froze before it hit the ground. Most men had already descended to the lower valleys, seeking the relative warmth of civilization. But Ezra Stone wasn't most men. He had been dead for 7 years. At least, that's what it felt like. The cabin stood at 9,200 feet, a rough structure of pine logs chinked with moss and clay, 4 paces wide, 5 paces deep. A stone fireplace occupied the north wall, built from river rock he'd hauled up the mountain one painful load at a time. A single window faced east, covered now with oiled canvas to keep out the wind. The door hung straight on leather hinges he'd cut and cured himself. Inside, the space held everything a man needed to survive and nothing more. A bed frame of split pine, a table with 3 legs, and a stack of flat stones for the fourth. Traps hanging from wooden pegs, a Sharps .52 caliber rifle mounted above the fireplace, skinning knives, rope, a tin coffee pot blackened by 1,000 fires, and on the small shelf beside the bed, gathering dust, a single photograph in a wooden frame, Sarah and Emma, his wife and daughter, taken in the spring of 1860, back when the world still made sense. Ezra stood at the window now, watching the pre-dawn darkness. He was 33 years old, though the mirror, when he bothered to look, showed a man closer to 50. His beard had grown wild and thick, brown shot through with red, reaching nearly to his chest. His hair touched his shoulders. His hands were scarred and calloused. His eyes, once a warm gray, had turned the color of winter sky. The ritual of morning never changed. Wake at 5 when darkness still pressed against the canvas window. Stir the coals in the fireplace, add kindling, then larger wood. Wait for the flame. Brew coffee in the tin pot, black and strong enough to strip paint. Dress in layers, wool union suit, flannel shirt, leather vest, and over it all, the great coat made from the hide of a grizzly bear he'd killed 3 winters ago. The bear had been old and mean, driven down from higher elevations by hunger. It had tried to break into the cabin while Ezra slept. He'd put a bullet through its skull at point-blank range, then spent 2 weeks curing the hide. Now it kept him warm. He pulled on his boots, thick leather worn soft with use and greased with bear fat. Checked his weapons. The Sharps held a single round. He had 33 more cartridges in a leather pouch. His Colt Navy revolver, tucked in his belt, held 6 rounds with the hammer resting on an empty chamber. His Bowie knife, 14 inches of hand-forged steel, rode in a sheath on his left hip. Before leaving, he did what he always did. He looked at the photograph for exactly 3 seconds. No more, no less. Any longer, and the grief would swallow him whole. Sarah smiled out from the sepia tones, her blonde hair pulled back, her eyes bright with life. Emma sat on her lap, 5 years old, gap-toothed and giggling at something the photographer had said. That photograph had been taken 6 months before the fever came. 6 months before Ezra had ridden 40 miles through a spring blizzard to fetch the doctor, only to return and find them both already gone. He had buried them on a hillside facing east, so they could see the sunrise. Then he had come up here, to this high, lonely place, and tried to forget how to be human. The sky was turning gray when he stepped outside. The cold hit like a fist, minus 15 degrees, maybe colder. His breath crystallized instantly. The snow reached past his knees. His horse, a spotted Appaloosa he'd named Ash, stood in the lean-to he'd built against the cabin's south wall, its breath steaming in the frigid air. Ezra had planned to ride down to Salvation Ridge today. He needed salt, coffee, and ammunition. The town lay 12 miles south and 3,000 feet lower, far enough that the trip would take most of the day in this snow. He'd been putting it off for 2 weeks, but supplies were running low. He saddled Ash, his movements automatic. The horse stamped and snorted, unhappy about leaving the shelter. Ezra didn't blame him. He swung into the saddle, adjusting the Sharps rifle across his back, and turned the horse's head south. They had gone maybe half a mile when he heard the shots. 3 reports, sharp and clear in the cold air. Rifle fire, maybe a mile away, maybe less. Sound traveled strangely in the mountains, bouncing off peaks and valleys. Ezra pulled Ash to a stop and listened. A scream followed the gunshots, high-pitched, distant, definitely human. Definitely female. Ezra sat motionless in the saddle. Not your business, he told himself. Could be anything. A hunting accident, a domestic dispute. None of it concerned a man who'd spent 7 years avoiding human contact. But the scream came again, and this time he heard words carried on the wind. Words he couldn't make out, but the terror in them was unmistakable. His hands tightened on the reins. Ash shifted beneath him, sensing his tension. Ezra stared south toward Salvation Ridge, toward the life he'd been trying to leave behind. Another scream, closer now, or maybe just louder. He thought of Sarah, of the promise he'd made as she lay dying, her hand cold in his. "Don't become stone," she'd whispered. "Promise me. Stay human." He had failed that promise every day for 7 years. Ezra turned Ash toward the sound of the screams. The town of Salvation Ridge had 214 souls, according to the faded sign at the north end of the main street. It squatted in a shallow valley where two creeks met, surrounded by pine forest on three sides and open rangeland to the south. One street ran the length of it, lined with rough-cut buildings, a general store, a saloon, a church with a crooked steeple, a dozen houses. Fort Garland lay 12 miles east, close enough that the town served as a supply point for soldiers and settlers alike. Ezra approached from the north, keeping to the tree line. The screaming had stopped, but he could see a crowd gathered in the town square. Maybe 40 or 50 people forming a tight circle around something he couldn't yet see. Their voices carried across the snow, angry and excited. He dismounted and led Ash into a stand of pines behind the general store. From there, he could see the square clearly. The woman knelt in the center of the circle, her hands bound behind her back with manila rope. Even at this distance, Ezra could see the blood on her face, dark against brown skin. Her hair, he realized with a sick lurch, had been cut, not trimmed, hacked. Chunks of black hair lay scattered in the trampled snow around her. Her dress, a simple calico pattern, was torn at the shoulder. And beneath the dress, unmistakable even at 30 yards, the swell of late pregnancy. She wasn't crying. Her head was up, her jaw set, her eyes moving across the faces of her tormentors with something that looked less like fear and more like defiant rage. A man in black stood over her, holding a Bible. Reverend Thaddeus Crane. Ezra recognized him even from here. The old preacher's voice boomed across the square. "This half-breed whore has defiled our town. She lay with a soldier, conceived a bastard child, and now dares to show her face among decent Christian folk." The crowd roared approval. An older woman, gray-haired and heavy-set, stepped forward. Mrs. Gertrude Walsh. She held a pair of shears, the blades still dark with blood. "We should hang her," Walsh said loudly, "like the savage she is." "Hanging's too good," someone else shouted. "Leave her in the snow. Let the cold take her." Ezra's hands clenched into fists. He'd seen mob justice before, seen what happened when good people convinced themselves that cruelty was righteousness. It never ended well. The sound of hoofbeats drew his attention. 6 mounted soldiers rode into the square, led by an officer in a blue Union coat with Colonel's eagles on his shoulders. The crowd parted for them. Colonel Josiah Blackburn sat straight in his saddle, his face carved from granite, his eyes cold. He was maybe 55, with iron gray hair and a mustache to match. He looked at the kneeling woman for a long moment, and something flickered across his face. Something that might have been fear, quickly hidden. "Let this be a lesson," Blackburn said, his voice carrying authority. "Race mixing is a sin against God and nature. This woman has violated the natural order. She will remain here until sundown as a warning to others who might follow her shameful path." The woman's head snapped up. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "My name is Ayasha. Lieutenant Crawford loved me. This child is his legacy. You can cut my hair. You can shame me, but you cannot erase the truth." Blackburn's face went pale. His horse shifted beneath him, picking up on its rider's sudden tension. "Gag her," the colonel snapped. "I won't have lies spoken in this town." A sergeant dismounted, pulling a dirty rag from his saddlebag. He moved toward Ayasha, who held her ground, still staring at Blackburn with those fierce, unyielding eyes. Ezra had seen enough. He stepped out from behind the general store and walked into the square. His boots crunched in the snow, each step deliberate and measured. The crowd noticed him slowly, conversations dying as heads turned. He was a sight, he knew, tall and broad in his bearskin coat, his beard won't or mauled, his eyes cold as the winter sky. He smelled of wood smoke and animal hide in the high mountains. People moved aside without being asked. He stopped 15 feet from the bound woman, close enough to see the blood trickling from small cuts on her scalp, close enough to see the proud set of her jaw, the fierce intelligence in her dark eyes, close enough to notice, with a strange jolt, the thin scar on her right wrist in the exact shape of a crescent moon, just like the one Emma had borne. The thought hit him like a physical blow. Emma had cut herself on barbed wire when she was 4. The scar had healed into that same crescent shape. Sarah used to kiss it every night before bed, calling it Emma's moon mark. This woman had the same scar. It meant nothing, of course. Coincidence. But something about it, about her, about the whole ugly scene made decision crystallize in his chest like ice forming on still water. Blackburn's voice cut through his thoughts. "This isn't your concern, mountain men." Ezra turned his head slowly, meeting the colonel's gaze. He didn't speak, just looked at him with the kind of flat, empty stare that men who lived alone in wild places learned to perfect. "I said," Blackburn continued, his voice harder now, "this is not your concern. Move along." Ezra looked back at the woman. Ayasha. Her eyes met his, and for a moment something passed between them. Not pleading. She wasn't begging for rescue. Just acknowledgement, human to human, a recognition that they saw each other clearly, without pretense. "Untie her," Ezra said. His voice came out rough from disuse, but the words were clear enough. The crowd went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Reverend Crane stepped forward, his face red with indignation. "You dare interfere with the Lord's judgment?" Ezra turned his head to look at the preacher. "I see a pregnant woman tied in the snow. Don't see the Lord anywhere in that. She fornicated with a soldier, bore a child of sin." "You married, Reverend?" Crane blinked, thrown by the question. "Of course, a godly union." "Then you know what love looks like," Ezra said. "Or maybe you forgot." "Love!" Crane's voice rose to a shriek. "This is lust, animal depravity. She's not even fully human. She's half savage, half Mexican, an abomination before God." Ezra's jaw tightened. "I see a woman, alone, pregnant, tied up like an animal. You call that godly work?" A new voice spoke up. An older woman had pushed her way to the front of the crowd. Ada Finch, owner of the general store. Her face was lined with worry, but she met Ezra's eyes with something like gratitude. "Colonel," she said, "perhaps we should reconsider. Daniel Crawford was a good man. This child deserves better than—" "Stay out of this, Ada," Blackburn snapped. His horse danced sideways, agitated. "Crawford was a fool who let his base desires cloud his judgment. This woman is a whore who trapped him with her savage wiles." The sergeant who'd been moving to gag Ayasha put his hand on his pistol. 3 other soldiers did the same. The temperature in the square seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Ezra didn't move, didn't reach for his weapons. Just stood there, a mountain of a man in a bear hide coat, his eyes moving slowly from soldier to soldier, measuring each one. "You want to draw?" he said quietly. "Draw." No one moved. The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt longer. Finally, Blackburn made a small gesture with his hand. The soldiers relaxed slightly, though their hands stayed near their weapons. "You're making a mistake, mountainman," the colonel said. "Walk away now and we'll forget this happened." Ezra didn't answer. Instead, he moved. 3 long strides brought him to Ayasha's side. He pulled the Bowie knife from his belt in one smooth motion. The blade caught the weak wintry light. The sergeant drew his pistol. Ezra had already cut through the rope binding Ayasha's wrists. It fell away, landing in the red-stained snow. He sheathed his knife and shrugged out of his bearskin coat. The cold bit through his vest and shirt immediately, but he ignored it. He draped the heavy coat around Ayasha's shoulders. It swallowed her smaller frame, the warmth of it making her gasp. Then he bent and lifted her into his arms. She weighed maybe 100 pounds. Less probably, given the gauntness in her face. She stiffened in his arms, her breath catching. For a moment he thought she might fight him, might demand to be put down. Her pride wouldn't want rescue, but then her body relaxed slightly, accepting the necessity. "Easy," he murmured. "I got you." The sergeant's pistol was pointed directly at Ezra's head now. Blackburn's face had gone from pale to red. "Put her down, right now, that's an order." Ezra turned to look at him. "You gonna shoot me in front of all these witnesses? In front of your men? Unarmed man carrying a pregnant woman?" The colonel's jaw worked. His hand moved toward his own sidearm. "Go ahead," Ezra said. "But you better kill me with the first shot. Because if you don't, I promise you, Colonel, you won't get a second one." The weight of the threat hung in the air. Blackburn might have been many things, but he wasn't stupid. He could see the truth in Ezra's eyes. This wasn't a bluff. Ezra carried Ayasha through the crowd. People scattered before him like snow before a plow. No one tried to stop him. He could feel dozens of eyes on his back, could almost hear the sergeant's finger tightening on the trigger. But no shot came. He reached Ash and set Ayasha on the saddle as gently as he could. She swayed, dizzy from cold and shock, in the sudden movement. He steadied her with one hand while mounting up behind her. His arms came around her to grip the reins, creating a protective cage. Blackburn's voice followed them. "You're a dead man, mountain man. You hear me? Dead." Ezra turned in the saddle, looking back at the colonel one last time. "Been dead 7 years," he said. "This is just walking." He nudged Ash into motion. The horse moved forward carefully, finding purchase in the deep snow. Behind them, the town square erupted in shouts. Blackburn was yelling orders. Someone screamed, but the sounds faded as Ezra guided Ash north, back toward the high country. They had covered maybe 100 yards when Ayasha spoke for the first time. "Why, Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't know me." Ezra was silent for a long moment, then, "Had a daughter once. She'd be near your age now if she'd lived. Couldn't save her. Maybe I can save you." "I don't need saving." Despite everything, Ezra almost smiled. "Then why you still breathing?" She had no answer to that. They rode in silence. Behind them, growing fainter, the sounds of men mounting horses. The pursuit would come. Of course it would. Men like Blackburn didn't let challenges to their authority go unanswered. The snow started falling harder. Big wet flakes that stuck to Ash's mane and Ezra's shoulders. Within 20 minutes, they'd be riding blind. The tracks they were leaving would fill in, making them harder to follow. Small mercies. Ezra could feel Ayasha shivering despite the bearskin coat. Shock setting in, combined with cold and exhaustion. He pulled her back against his chest, sharing what body heat he could. She resisted for a moment, then gave in, too tired to maintain her pride. "There's a cabin," he said, 8 miles north. Old Trapper built it before the war. You'll be safe there." "They'll follow." "I know." "Then why take me? Why risk your life?" The question hung between them. Ezra searched for an answer and found none that made sense. Or rather, found too many answers, all tangled up with memories of Sarah and Emma, with 7 years of self-imposed exile, with the look in Ayasha's eyes when she'd said the child was Crawford's legacy. "Because it's right," he said finally. Ayasha made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Right. When has that ever mattered?" Ezra didn't answer, couldn't answer, because she was right. The world didn't care about right. Sarah had been right, and Emma had been innocent, and both of them were dead anyway. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly why it mattered. Because someone had to care. Someone had to choose right over easy, mercy over cruelty, even when it cost everything. They rode through the falling snow, two strangers bound together by circumstance and desperation, while behind them the sound of pursuit grew closer. The storm intensified as they climbed higher. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. The temperature plummeted. Ezra's face went numb despite his beard. Ice formed in his mustache. Every breath burned his lungs. Ayasha had stopped shivering, which was worse than if she'd continued. Her body was shutting down, conserving heat for the core, for the baby. Ezra urged Ash faster, but the horse was struggling in snow that now reached past its knees. After what felt like hours but was probably only 90 minutes, he spotted the familiar landmark. A lightning-struck pine, its trunk split and blackened, branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The cabin lay just beyond. It materialized out of the white curtain of falling snow, small and dark and half buried in drifts, but intact. Ezra pulled Ash to a stop beside the door. He dismounted, his legs nearly buckling after the long cold ride, then reached up to lift Ayasha down. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow and rapid. Her lips had gone blue. The cuts on her scalp had stopped bleeding but were crusted with frozen blood. Ezra kicked the door open and carried her inside. The cabin was dark and cold, but at least it was shelter. He laid her on the rough wooden bunk against the far wall, then quickly got to work. Fire first. Always fire first. His hands were clumsy with cold, but muscle memory took over. He found the small cache of kindling he'd left here on his last visit, maybe 2 years ago. Found the fire steel and char cloth. His fingers were so numb he could barely feel the steel, but he struck it anyway, sending sparks cascading onto the char cloth. Once, twice, 3 times. The char cloth caught. He transferred it carefully to the nest of shave bark and dry pine needles. Blew gently, coaxing flame from ember. The kindling caught, then larger sticks, then split logs. Light and warmth slowly filled the small space. Ezra turned back to Ayasha. She hadn't moved. He pulled off his gloves and checked her pulse. Weak but steady. He lifted her hand, examining the fingers. The fingertips were white, bloodless. Frostbite, but probably not severe yet. Working quickly, he pulled off her boots. Her feet were in worse shape. 2 toes on her left foot had gone purple. He cursed softly and began the delicate process of warming them. Not too fast, which would cause more damage, but steadily, bringing blood flow back. He filled his tin pot with snow and set it by the fire to melt. As it heated, he removed Ayasha's torn dress, trying to preserve her modesty as much as possible while checking for other injuries. Bruises on her arms where rough hands had grabbed her. More cuts on her scalp, but nothing broken, nothing bleeding internally. The bearskin coat he wrapped around her like a cocoon, tucking it tight. Then he added his own blanket, then his spare shirt, anything to build layers of warmth. The water in the pot began to steam, not boiling, just warm. He soaked a piece of cloth in it and began cleaning the cuts on her scalp. She stirred at the touch, her eyelids fluttering. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe now." Her eyes opened, dark brown, almost black, with flecks of gold near the pupils. They focused on his face with difficulty. "Where?" Her voice was barely audible. "Old trapper cabin, about 8 miles north of Salvation Ridge. The storm should cover our tracks, at least for a while." She tried to sit up. He gently pushed her back down. "You need to rest. You're half frozen and in shock." "The baby." "The baby," she repeated. Her hand moved to her swollen belly, feeling for movement. Something must have reassured her because her face relaxed slightly. "Still alive. For now, but you need warmth and rest. When's the last time you ate?" She thought about it. "Yesterday, maybe the day before." Ezra nodded and stood. He had some dried venison in his saddlebags, and he'd seen rabbit tracks outside. But that would have to wait. For now, he poured warm water into a cup and brought it to her lips. "Drink. Slowly." She obeyed, taking small sips. The color was starting to return to her face, though she still looked drawn and exhausted. Outside, the wind howled. The storm would make pursuit difficult, maybe impossible. But Blackburn struck him as a man who didn't give up easily. And there was something else. Something in the way the colonel had looked at Ayasha. Not just anger or disgust, fear. What secret was worth hunting a pregnant woman through a blizzard? Ayasha's hand caught his wrist, surprisingly strong. "Thank you," she said, "for what you did. I know it cost you." Ezra looked at her hand on his wrist, at the crescent-shaped scar that matched the one Emma had carried. Coincidence. Just coincidence. But maybe Sarah had been right. Maybe the universe did send signs to those willing to see them. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll figure out what comes next in the morning." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then released his wrist and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing had deepened into sleep. Ezra sat by the fire, listening to the storm rage outside, wondering what he had gotten himself into, wondering if this was redemption or just another way to die. Either way, there was no going back now. The storm raged through the night, wind screaming around the cabin's corners like something alive and hunting. Ezra sat by the fire, adding wood every hour, watching the flames dance shadows across the rough-hewn walls. Sleep would have been a luxury he couldn't afford, even if his mind had allowed it. Ayasha slept fitfully, her breathing sometimes rapid and shallow, other times deep and steady. Twice she cried out in languages he didn't understand, Apache or Spanish, words torn from dreams he could only imagine. Each time he checked her pulse, her temperature, the movement of the child in her belly. Each time she settled back into restless sleep without fully waking. The cabin grew warm, almost stuffy with the fire burning strong. Ezra removed his vest and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and traced with old scars. A grizzly's claw marks across his left arm, a knife wound on his right, gift from a claim jumper in '63. The rope burn around his wrists from the time he'd been paid to a wagon wheel and left to die by Comancheros. His body was a map of survival, each mark a story of barely escaping death. He wondered what scars Ayasha carried, beyond the fresh cuts on her scalp. Dawn came late and gray, the storm finally exhausting itself into a sullen snowfall. Ezra stood at the window, peering through a gap in the shutters. The world outside was white and still, snow piled in drifts that reached halfway up the cabin's walls. Their tracks from last night had vanished completely, erased by wind and fresh powder. But that wouldn't stop determined men. Colonel Blackburn had the look of someone who didn't forgive slights to his authority. And there had been something else in his eyes when he looked at Ayasha, something beyond simple prejudice or moral outrage. Fear. The colonel had been afraid. Behind him, Ayasha stirred. Ezra turned to see her pushing herself up on one elbow, wincing at the movement. The bearskin coat fell away from her shoulders. She'd slept in her undergarments, her torn dress hanging from a peg to dry by the fire. Easy, Ezra said. You've been through hell. Your body needs time. My body doesn't have time. Her voice was stronger than last night, though still rough. They're coming. You know they are. Storm bought us hours, maybe a day if we're lucky. We won't be lucky. She swung her legs off the bunk, testing her feet on the cold floor. Her toes were still purple, but the color was better than last night. How far can we go before they catch up? Ezra moved to the fire and poured hot water from the pot into 2 tin cups. He'd found some pine needle tea in a jar on the shelf, old but still good. He handed her a cup. Depends on how many men he sends, how well they know the mountains, whether they brought dogs. He paused. You need to tell me what I'm up against. Why would a colonel risk his career hunting one woman through winter? Ayasha sipped the tea, her dark eyes studying him over the rim of the cup. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she set the cup down carefully. Because I'm his daughter. The words fell into the silence like stones into deep water. Ezra felt something shift inside him, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Explain. My mother was Apache. Her name was Marisol. She was captured during a raid on a Mexican settlement when she was 16. The Apache who took her wasn't cruel. He let her live as one of them. She learned the language, the ways. She was happy, or as happy as a captive could be. Ayasha's hand moved unconsciously to her belly, protective. Then the army came. 1841, Fort Defiance. Lieutenant Josiah Blackburn led the raid. Most of the warriors were away hunting. The soldiers killed the old men and women, took the younger women as prizes. Her voice went flat, emotionless. Blackburn kept my mother for 3 months, used her. When she got pregnant, he abandoned her at a trading post outside Salvation Ridge, told everyone she was a savage whore who'd tried to seduce him. Ezra's jaw tightened. He'd seen plenty of cruelty in his years, but something about this particular evil made his hands curl into fists. My mother gave birth alone, Ayasha continued. She died from the bleeding 2 days later, but before she died, she wrote a letter, in Spanish. She told the shopkeeper, a woman named Mrs. Hartwell, to give it to me when I was old enough to understand. A bitter smile crossed her face. Mrs. Hartwell kept me as a servant, fed me scraps, beat me when I asked questions. But when I turned 16, she gave me the letter. I think she was dying herself and didn't want to carry the secret to her grave. What did the letter say? The truth. About Blackburn. About how he raped my mother, then discarded her like garbage. About how she loved me anyway, even though I was born from violence. Ayasha's hand tightened on the cup. I confronted him 6 months ago, showed him the letter, told him I wanted nothing from him except acknowledgement, just to hear him say my mother's name. What did he do? He had me beaten, thrown out of Fort Garland, told everyone I was a liar trying to extort money from an officer. Then he started spreading rumors that I was a prostitute, that I'd slept with half the regiment. Her voice broke slightly, but Daniel Crawford knew the truth. He believed me. He loved me anyway. Ezra absorbed this, processing the implications. Crawford, the Lieutenant Reverend Crane mentioned. Lieutenant Daniel Crawford, 28 years old, kind, gentle, everything his fellow officers weren't. A tear slid down Ayasha's cheek. He proposed to me, said we'd leave the Army, go to Oregon, start fresh where no one knew us. We were going to be married. She touched the hidden pocket of her dress where Ezra could see the outline of something small and round. A ring. Then the Comanche attacked a supply wagon. Daniel was riding escort. He took an arrow through the throat, protecting a private who'd frozen in fear. Bled out in 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Don't be. I had 8 months of happiness with him. That's more than most people get. She looked up, meeting Ezra's eyes. But Blackburn can't let this child live. Don't you see? If word gets out that he fathered a child with an Apache woman he raped, his career ends. His pension disappears. Everything he built on lies crumbles. This baby is proof of his crime. As long as we live, he'll never be safe. Ezra walked to the window again, staring out at the white wilderness. Colonel Josiah Blackburn. He'd heard the name before, though he couldn't place where. A man with that much to lose would be desperate, dangerous. How many men can he call on? At Fort Garland, 300 soldiers. But he won't use all of them. Can't. Too many questions. He'll pick men he trusts. Men who won't ask why they're hunting a pregnant woman through a blizzard. She stood, wobbling slightly, then steadied herself against the bunk. Probably 10, maybe 12. His sergeant, Marcus Webb. A few privates who owe him favors. And he'll force Joseph Two Rivers to track us. Two Rivers? Ezra's head snapped around. You know him? Know of him. Cherokee tracker. Good man by reputation. Why would Blackburn force him? Because Two Rivers owes the Army. His wife died 3 years ago. The town left her to freeze during a storm because she was Indian. Two Rivers wanted justice, but Blackburn threatened to have him hanged if he made trouble. Now the colonel uses him whenever he needs tracking done, holds that threat over his head. Ezra felt something cold settle in his stomach. If Two Rivers was tracking them, they were in trouble. The man could follow a shadow across bare rock, or so the stories claimed. But there was another possibility. Two Rivers, Ezra said slowly, watched his wife die from the same kind of cruelty you faced. You think he'll really help Blackburn kill you? Ayasha's eyes widened slightly as she understood. You think he might help us? Don't know, but a man forced to work against his conscience sometimes finds ways to resist. Ezra turned from the window. Either way, we need to move. Can you ride? Do I have a choice? No, she nodded, accepting the reality. Then I can ride. While Ayasha dressed in her now dry clothing, Ezra went outside to check on Ash and scout the area. The cold hit him like a wall, 20 below zero at least. The sky was clearing, which was both good and bad. Good because they could see where they were going. Bad because trackers could see where they'd been. Ash had survived the night in the small lean-to attached to the cabin. Ezra fed the horse some grain from his saddlebags and checked its hooves for ice buildup. The Appaloosa was tough, mountain-bred, but even the hardiest horse had limits. Movement in the tree line caught his eye. Ezra froze, his hand moving automatically to the colt at his belt. He scanned the pines, looking for the source. There, a flash of brown against white. Too big for a deer, too deliberate for a bear. A man stepped out from behind a massive spruce, hands raised and empty. He was maybe 45, lean and weathered, with long black hair braided with red cloth. He wore buckskins and a wool coat, and his face bore the high cheekbones and copper skin of Cherokee heritage. Joseph Two Rivers. "Easy, Stone," Two Rivers called out. "I'm not here to fight." Ezra's hand stayed on his pistol. "Then why are you here?" "To buy you time." Two Rivers walked forward slowly, his boots crunching in the snow. "Blackburn has 12 men. They left at first light. I'm supposed to be tracking you, but I led them east toward Dead Man's Canyon. Told them your trail went that way." "Why?" Two Rivers stopped 10 feet away. Up close, Ezra could see the exhaustion in his face, the grief etched in lines around his eyes. "My wife," Two Rivers said simply. "Her name was White Dove. She died because people in Salvation Ridge thought Indian lives didn't matter. I couldn't save her. But maybe I can save Ayasha and her child." He glanced toward the cabin. "Is she all right?" "She's alive. Strong." "Good. Daniel Crawford was a good man, one of the few soldiers worth it a damn. His child deserves better than being hunted like an animal." Ezra studied the tracker, weighing his words. Trust was a luxury he'd learned to live without. But something in Two Rivers' face, in the set of his shoulders, spoke of truth. "How long before Blackburn figures out you lied?" "Hour, maybe two. There's a private, James Morrison, Daniel Crawford's younger brother. He volunteered for the hunt, but I think he's trying to slow them down, same as me. Between the two of us, we might give you 3 hours. After that." Two Rivers shook his head. "Marcus Webb is smarter than he looks. He'll backtrack, find your real trail. Then we run west, higher into the mountains. In winter, Stone, you'll kill her trying to cross the passes. Staying here will kill her for certain." Two Rivers was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's another option. My camp, 20 miles northwest. Hidden valley, hard to find unless you know the way. My people are there. Not many, maybe 15 Cherokee who refuse to go to the territory. We've survived 3 winters unmolested because we stay hidden and don't make trouble." "You'd risk exposing them?" "I'd risk anything despite Blackburn." The tracker's voice went hard. "That man represents everything wrong with the Army, everything wrong with how Indians are treated. If helping you costs him his career, his reputation, his peace of mind, then I'll die happy." Ezra made his decision. "Show us the way." Two Rivers nodded. "Get the woman, we leave now. And Stone, when this is over, when Blackburn comes for you because he will, don't hesitate. Men like him don't deserve mercy." They were 5 miles from the cabin when they heard the dogs. The baying carried across the frozen landscape, distant but unmistakable. Bloodhounds, at least 3, maybe 4. Webb must have brought them from the fort, which meant Blackburn had planned this hunt carefully. Two Rivers cursed in Cherokee. "They found the trail faster than I thought." Ayasha, riding behind Ezra, tensed against his back. "How far to your camp?" 15 miles, through rough country." Two Rivers looked at the sky, gauging the light. "We won't make it before dark, not with her condition." Ezra could feel Ayasha's exhaustion in the way she leaned against him. The ride was taking its toll. Her breathing had become labored, and twice he'd felt contractions ripple through her belly. The baby was stressed, trying to come early. "There's a cave system," Ezra said, "about 3 miles ahead. Used to cache supplies there when I was trapping. We could hide, wait them out." "They have dogs, Stone. Hiding won't work." "It will if we mask our scent." Ezra pointed toward a frozen creek cutting through the valley below. "We ride down the creek bed. Water, even frozen, confuses scent. Then we climb that ridge, double back through the rocks. By the time they figure it out, we're in the caves." Two Rivers considered this, then nodded. "Risky, but it might work." They descended to the creek, the horses struggling in the deep snow. The ice groaned under Ash's weight, but held. They followed the watercourse for a mile, the dogs baying growing louder behind them, then climbed the eastern ridge where exposed rock and wind-scoured ground left minimal tracks. The cave entrance was hidden behind a screen of ice-covered juniper. Ezra remembered it from his trapping days, a narrow opening that widened into a decent-sized chamber. He'd stored furs here once, before the bottom fell out of the beaver market. They dismounted and led the horses inside. The cave went back maybe 30 feet, with the ceiling high enough to stand upright. No light reached the back, but Ezra's memory filled in the details. A side chamber to the left, a narrow passage to the right that led deeper into the mountain, though he'd never explored how far. Two rivers began covering the entrance with branches and snow, disguising it. Ezra helped Ayasha to the ground at the back of the cave, wrapping her in the bearskin coat. "How long?" she asked through chattering teeth. "Long as it takes for them to give up or go the wrong way." "And if they don't?" Ezra didn't answer. They both knew. The dogs arrived 20 minutes later. The sound of baying filled the cave mouth, so close it seemed like the hounds were right outside. Men's voices followed, shouting over the wind. "Trail goes cold here!" That was Webb, his voice harsh and frustrated. The creek, a different voice, younger. They went down the creek. Smart, but they had to come out somewhere, split up. "Morrison, take 3 men south. I'll take the rest north. When you find where they left the water, fire 3 shots. The voices faded. The dogs continued to whine and circle, confused by the lost scent. But slowly the sounds moved away, following the creek in both directions. Ezra, Two Rivers, and Ayasha sat in darkness, not daring to speak. An hour passed, then another. The temperature in the cave dropped steadily. Ezra could no longer feel his toes. Finally, Two Rivers whispered, "They're gone for now." "We should keep moving," Ezra said. "In full dark? Through mountains? That's suicide." "Staying is worse." A groan from Ayasha cut off further argument. Ezra turned to her, though he could see nothing in the blackness. "What's wrong?" "The baby." Her voice was tight with pain. "Contractions, strong ones, every few minutes." "Can you ride?" "I don't think I have a choice." But when Ezra helped her stand, her legs buckled. She would have fallen if he hadn't caught her. Another contraction hit, and she cried out, unable to suppress the sound. "She's going into labor," Two Rivers said. "Stone, we can't move her." "Not like this." Ezra's mind raced through options. None of them good. Stay here, and Webb would eventually double back, search more thoroughly, find the cave. Try to move, and Ayasha might give birth on a frozen mountainside, killing both her and the child. "Light a fire," he said. "Small one, back in the side chamber. We deliver the baby. Then we run." "A fire? Are you insane? They'll see the smoke." "You have a better idea?" Two Rivers was silent. They moved deeper into the cave, into the side chamber Ezra remembered. It was smaller, maybe 8 feet across, but the ceiling opened into a natural chimney that would draw smoke up and out somewhere high on the mountainside. With luck, in the dark, it wouldn't be visible. Ezra built the fire while Two Rivers made a bed of pine boughs in their extra clothes. Ayasha was deep in labor now, the contractions coming every 3 minutes. Sweat poured down her face despite the cold. "I need you to help me," Ezra told Two Rivers. "I've done this once, my daughter, but I can't do it alone." The tracker nodded, his face grim. "Tell me what to do." The next 2 hours were among the longest of Ezra's life. Ayasha's screams echoed off the cave walls, impossible to muffle. 40 minutes into the labor, they heard voices outside, close, too close. "Colonel, it's past midnight. The men are exhausted. We should make camp, resume at first light." Webb's voice, Blackburn's reply, was ice. "No, we search until we find them. Every cave, every hollow, I want them found tonight." "Sir, we've searched a dozen caves already. They could be miles from here by now." "Then we make sure they can't run." A pause. "Gather deadfall, dry brush. We're going to smoke them out." "Smoke them out, Colonel, you mean?" "I mean we set fire to this entire mountainside if we have to. The smoke will drive them into the open or kill them in their hole. Either way, this ends tonight." Ezra and Two Rivers locked eyes in the firelit cave. Ayasha was mid-contraction, biting down on a strip of leather to keep from screaming. "He's gone mad," Two Rivers whispered. "No," Ezra said. "He's desperate," which is worse. They heard the soldiers moving, gathering wood. Smelled smoke as the first fires were lit on the slopes below. "We have maybe an hour," Two Rivers said. "When those fires spread uphill." The baby will be born by then, Ezra said. It has to be. But the night remained quiet except for Ayasha's agony and the crackling of distant flames. Ezra had watched his daughter Emma being born. He'd been there, holding Sarah's hand, seeing the miracle of life entering the world. But this was different. This was raw and desperate. A woman giving birth in a cave with minimal supplies and pursuers who wanted her dead. Push, he told Ayasha. I can see the head. One more, come on. She pushed, her scream turning into a roar of effort. And then suddenly the baby was there. A tiny, bloody, perfect girl. She wasn't crying. Ezra's heart stopped. He cleared the infant's mouth and nose, his hands shaking. Breathe, he whispered. Come on, little one, breathe. Two Rivers was beside him, rubbing the baby's back vigorously. Come on, come on. The baby gasped, coughed, and let out a thin wail, the most beautiful sound Ezra had ever heard. Ayasha sobbed with relief. Is she all right? Let me see her. Ezra wrapped the baby in his spare shirt and handed her to her mother. In the firelight, he could see the child's face. Copper skin, black hair, wet and matted. And when her eyes opened, they were the same green as spring grass, Daniel Crawford's eyes. She's perfect, Ayasha whispered. What should I name her? Ezra felt something break inside his chest, some wall he'd built 7 years ago crumbling to dust. Sarah, he said. Name her Sarah. Ayasha looked at him, understanding in her exhausted face. Sarah Marisol, for your wife and my mother. Sarah Marisol Crawford, Ezra agreed. Then before he could stop himself, but if you'll let me, Sarah Marisol Crawford Stone. The words hung in the small space. Ayasha stared at him, the baby nestled against her chest. You'd claim her? A child not yours by blood? I'd be honored to. A tear slid down Ayasha's face. Then yes, Sarah Marisol Crawford Stone, and you'll be her father, not by blood, but by choice. And two Rivers cleared his throat. This is beautiful and all, but we need to move, now, before Webb. Gunfire cracked through the night. 3 shots in rapid succession, coming from the south. Morrison's signal. They'd found the trail. Ezra was on his feet instantly, stamping out the fire. How long? 20 minutes, Two Rivers said. Maybe less if they're pushing hard. Can she travel? I can travel, Ayasha said, already trying to stand. I'll crawl if I have to. But she couldn't stand. The birth had taken everything she had. Ezra made the decision without hesitation. He scooped her up, baby and all, cradling them both against his chest. Two Rivers, lead us out. I'll carry them. Stone, that's 15 miles of mountain terrain in the dark. You can't. Watch me. And they emerged from the cave into a world of shadow and starlight. The sky had cleared completely, and a half-moon illuminated the snow-covered landscape in shades of silver and blue. Beautiful and deadly. Behind them, maybe a mile away, torches flickered. The hunting party was coming fast. Two Rivers led them northwest, picking a path through terrain that would have been treacherous in daylight and was nearly suicidal by night. But the tracker moved with the confidence of someone who'd walked these mountains his entire life. Ezra followed, his arms burning with the weight of Ayasha and the baby. Every step was agony. His thighs screamed. His back threatened to give out. But he thought of Sarah and Emma, buried on a hillside facing east. Thought of the promise he'd made and broken. Not this time. This time he'd carry them home or die trying. They'd gone maybe 3 miles when the voice called out from the darkness ahead. Stone, wait! Ezra stopped, lowering Ayasha and the baby to the ground and drawing his Colt in one smooth motion. Two Rivers had his rifle up, scanning the shadows. A figure stepped out from behind a boulder. Young, maybe 22, wearing the uniform of an army private. His hands were raised, empty. Don't shoot, the private said. I'm James Morrison, Daniel's brother. Ezra kept the pistol trained on him. That's supposed to mean something to me? It means I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help. Morrison took a cautious step closer. I slowed them down as much as I could. Told Webb I saw tracks going east. Bought you maybe 30 minutes, but he didn't believe me. He's coming, with all 12 men. Why help us? Morrison's voice broke. Because that baby is my niece. Daniel wrote me about Ayasha, about how much he loved her, about their plans. I couldn't help him when he was alive, but I can help his child now. He looked past Ezra to where Ayasha sat cradling the infant. Is it true? Did she have the baby? A daughter, Ayasha said softly. Your brother's daughter. Morrison's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. Then he straightened, soldier training taking over. Then let me buy you time. I'll lead them the wrong way. Tell them I saw you heading for the press. They'll kill you when they figure out you lied, Two Rivers said. Probably. Morrison smiled, and it was odd and resigned and somehow peaceful. But my brother died protecting someone weaker. Seems fitting, I do the same. He looked at Ayasha one more time. Tell her about Daniel, when she's old enough. Tell her he was a good man who loved her mother more than his own life. I will, Ayasha promised. Morrison nodded, then turned and ran back the way they'd come, shouting and waving his arms. Over here! Colonel, I found their trail. They went through Devil's Pass. His voice faded into the darkness. Ezra holstered his pistol and picked up Ayasha again. We keep moving. They had gone maybe 200 yards when they heard it. Morrison's voice, distant but clear. I'm certain. The tracks lead. Gunfire. 3 sharp cracks that echoed off the canyon walls. A scream, cut short. Then silence. Ezra stopped. Two Rivers closed his eyes. Webb shot him, the tracker said quietly. Knew he was lying. From the distance came Webb's voice, harsh and cold. Colonel, the private, was a traitor. Led us the wrong way on purpose. Blackburn's reply was too faint to make out. Ayasha's arms tightened around Ezra's neck. He was just a boy. He was a man, Ezra said, his voice rough. And he died saving his brother's child. We don't waste that. They walked faster, putting distance between themselves and the sound of Morrison's sacrifice. Behind them, faintly, they could hear Blackburn's roar of frustration as he realized how much time he'd lost. They'll be coming hard now, Two Rivers said. Then we move harder, Ezra replied. They walked through the night. Stars wheeled overhead, marking the passage of hours. Ezra's arms went numb, then started burning again, then went numb once more. His legs moved automatically, one foot in front of the other, driven by something deeper than conscious thought. Ayasha drifted in and out of consciousness. The baby slept, miraculously silent, nestled between her mother's breasts. Two Rivers led them through a maze of valleys and ridges, up slopes that seemed impossible, and down descents that were barely controlled falls. The tracker never hesitated, never second-guessed his path. Behind them, the sound of pursuit faded and died. They had been walking for 5 hours when Two Rivers stopped abruptly, holding up his hand. Ezra halted, his arms trembling with fatigue, Ayasha barely conscious against his chest. What is it? Ezra whispered. Two Rivers pointed at the snow, fresh tracks, massive paw prints nearly a foot across. Grizzly. Old male. Moving toward that rock outcrop. Ahead, barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness, was a tumble of boulders with a dark opening between them. A cave. We can't go in there, Two Rivers said. If that bear is denned up. A shout echoed from the valley behind them. Torches flickered in the distance, maybe half a mile away. The hunters had found their trail again. Ezra looked at the cave, then at the approaching torches. We're out of time. Check it, quietly. Two Rivers crept forward, his movements silent as falling snow. He disappeared into the cave entrance and Ezra counted his heartbeats. 20, 30, 40. The tracker emerged, his face grim. Grizzly, hibernating, big as a horse. We go in there, make any noise. It wakes up and we're dead. Ayasha stirred, her eyes opening. How close are they? 10 minutes, maybe less. She looked at Ezra, then at the cave. We hide, we're quiet. The baby won't cry, I promise. Ayasha, we have no choice, Ezra, you know it. Ezra cursed under his breath, then he nodded. They entered the cave like ghosts. The bear was enormous, its bulk filling the back of the small chamber, each breath a rumbling snore that seemed to shake the walls. Its fur was grizzled gray, and even in sleep it radiated lethal power. One claw, visible in the dim light, was as long as Ezra's hand. They pressed themselves against the front wall, barely 10 feet from the sleeping beast. Ezra set Ayasha down as gently as he could. The baby, miraculously, remained silent, her green eyes wide and staring. The torches came closer, voices carried on the still air. Tracks go this way! That was Webb. Spread out. Check every cave, every crevice. Footsteps crunched in the snow outside. A torch beam swept across the cave entrance, painting dancing shadows on the walls. The bear snorted and shifted. Ezra's hand went to his knife. If the grizzly woke, he'd have maybe 2 seconds to act. It wouldn't be enough. This one's empty, a soldier called. Just animal tracks. You sure? Yeah, no way anyone's in there. We'd hear them. The footsteps moved away. The torches faded. For another hour, they sat in perfect silence, barely breathing, while the bear slept 3 yards away. When the first gray light of dawn finally crept into the cave mouth, Two Rivers gestured. Time to go. They slipped out one by one, leaving the grizzly undisturbed. Only when they were 50 yards away did Ezra allow himself to breathe normally. Never again, he muttered. Agreed, Two Rivers said. They continued northwest, and an hour later, as the sun broke over the eastern peaks, they finally saw it. Dawn was breaking when Two Rivers finally stopped. We're here. Ezra looked around. They stood at the mouth of a narrow valley, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Steep walls of rock rose on 3 sides, and a frozen stream wound through the center. At the far end, maybe half a mile distant, he could see structures. Cabins, lean-tos, the distinctive cone shapes of Cherokee lodges. Smoke rose from multiple fires. People moved between the buildings. Children played in the snow. A hidden village, tucked away in the folds of the mountains where the army would never find it. An old man emerged from the largest cabin, his long white hair braided with feathers. He looked at Two Rivers, then at Ezra and his burden, and finally at the newborn baby. Joseph, the old man said, what have you brought to our doorstep? Trouble, Gray Wolf, and hope, both in the same package. Gray Wolf's weathered face creased into a smile. Then they are welcome. All who flee injustice are welcome in this place. A young man pushed past the elder, his eyes wide with disbelief. He was maybe 16, lean and fierce, with a bow slung across his back and scars on his hands that spoke of hard survival. Ayasha? His voice cracked. Cousin, is that you? Ayasha's head lifted from Ezra's chest. Her eyes focused with difficulty, then widened. Little bear, you're alive? The youth dropped to his knees in the snow beside them. I thought you were dead. When the soldiers came to our village, I was hunting. I came back and everyone was... He couldn't finish. They spoke rapidly in Apache, words tumbling over each other, both crying. Ezra stood still, giving them the moment. Gray Wolf spoke quietly to him. The boy survived the massacre 2 winters ago, same raid that killed Ayasha's parents. He has been with us since, but he thought he was the only one left of their people. Little Bear touched the baby's tiny hand. Daniel's child. Ayasha nodded. Her name is Sarah. The young Apache looked at Ezra. You saved them? He did, Ayasha said. He's her father now, by choice. Little Bear stood and faced Ezra, then placed his fist over his heart in an Apache gesture of respect. Then you are my brother, and I will stand with you against whoever comes. Gray Wolf gestured toward the cabins. Come, rest, heal. We will deal with whatever comes after. Ezra carried Ayasha into the warm interior of a cabin and finally set her down. His arms refused to obey when he tried to straighten them. They stayed locked in the position of carrying, and Two Rivers had to physically pull them down. You did it, the tracker said quietly. 15 miles, with a woman and baby in the dark. Stone, I've seen a lot in my life, but that's something I won't forget. Ezra barely heard him. He was looking at Ayasha, who was looking at the baby, who was looking at nothing and everything with those impossible green eyes. We're safe? Ayasha asked. For now, Ezra said. And later? We'll deal with later when it comes. But even as he said it, he knew. Blackburn would come. Men like him always did. They couldn't let challenges go unanswered. Couldn't let their secrets walk free in the world. The hunt wasn't over. It had barely begun. Outside, the sun rose over the hidden valley, painting the snow in shades of gold and pink. And 5 miles to the south, Colonel Josiah Blackburn stood over the body of Private James Morrison and promised himself that before this was over, he'd make everyone involved pay for making him look like a fool. The war had just begun, and winter had a long way to go. 3 days passed in the Hidden Valley, 3 days of uneasy peace that felt more like the calm before a storm than any true safety. Ezra spent most of that time watching the southern approaches, his Sharps rifle always within reach, waiting for the inevitable. Ayasha recovered slowly. The Cherokee women tended to her with practiced hands, bringing her broths made from venison and wild herbs, massaging her swollen feet, singing songs in their language that seemed to ease the baby's crying. Little Sarah, as everyone had taken to calling her, proved to be a hungry, demanding infant who slept in short bursts and woke screaming for milk at all hours. Gray Wolf, the village elder, took Ezra aside on the second day. "The tracker tells me you saved the woman from a mob," the old man said. They stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the valley. "That you carried her 15 miles through winter dark, that you claim her child as your own." "I do," Ezra said simply. "Why? You owe her nothing. Her troubles are not yours." Ezra was quiet for a long moment, searching for an answer. "Had a wife once, a daughter. They died while I was away trying to save them. Been running from that failure for 7 years." He looked at the old man. "Maybe I'm tired of running." Gray Wolf nodded slowly. "The Ani Yunwea, my people, we believe that sometimes the spirits send us second chances, but second chances come with a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" "What's the price?" "Blood, pain, the ending of your old life so a new one can begin." The elder's dark eyes were shrewd. "The colonel will come, you know. Men like him always do. They cannot bear to be defied. And when he comes, this place, this sanctuary we have built, will be endangered. Then I'll leave, draw him away from here. And the woman, the child, they stay, under your protection." "No." The voice came from behind them. Ayasha had emerged from one of the cabins, wrapped in a Cherokee blanket, the baby sleeping in a sling across her chest. "Where you go, we go." "You can't travel," Ezra said. "You gave birth 3 days ago. You need rest, warmth, safety. I need to survive, and the only way we survive is together." She walked to them, her steps still unsteady but determined. "Blackburn won't stop hunting us, not ever. As long as Sarah lives, she's proof of his crime. He'll burn this village to the ground if he thinks we're here." "Then we draw him somewhere else," Ezra said. "Somewhere we can finish this." 2 rivers appeared from between the cabins, moving with the silent grace of a born hunter. "I know a place, Devil's Throat. It's a narrow canyon about 8 miles east. Steep walls, only one way in or out. If we position ourselves right, a few men could hold off an army there." "Or get trapped and slaughtered," Gray Wolf observed. "Better there than here, putting your people at risk." The elder studied them for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You have the hearts of warriors, all 3 of you. Very well, we will help you prepare. But know that if you choose this path, there is no turning back. You will stand and fight, or you will die. There isn't a third option." "Well, there never was," Ezra said. They spent the rest of the day making preparations. The Cherokee provided supplies: dried venison, pemmican, blankets, ammunition. A young man named Little Bear, who Gray Wolf introduced as Ayasha's cousin, insisted on coming with them. "The Mescalero and the Chiricahua are brothers," Little Bear said in halting English. He was maybe 16, lean and fierce, with eyes that had seen too much for his years. "When the soldiers came to our village 2 winters ago, Ayasha was away gathering medicine plants. She survived. I survived because I was hunting. Everyone else," he didn't finish the sentence. "She is my only family. I will not let her face this alone." Ayasha embraced him, tears streaming down her face. They spoke in rapid Apache, words Ezra couldn't understand but whose meaning was clear in their embrace. That night, Ezra sat alone by the fire in the cabin they had been given. He was cleaning his rifle, a meditative process that helped him think. The door opened and Ayasha entered, the baby asleep in her arms. "May I sit?" "It's your cabin, too." She settled beside him, adjusting Sarah in her arms. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance. "Tell me about your wife," Ayasha said finally. "Your real story, not just the pieces you've shared." Ezra's hands stilled on the rifle. For 7 years, he'd avoided talking about Sarah, as if speaking her name would make the loss more real. But something about this moment, about Ayasha's presence, made the words come easier. "Met her at a county fair in Missouri. I was 19, thought I was real slick. She was 17, way too smart for me, but for some reason she let me court her anyway." He smiled at the memory. Her daddy didn't approve. I was poor, no prospects, just a kid who was good with a rifle and not much else. But Sarah didn't care. We ran off, got married by a circuit preacher, and headed west to make our fortune. "Did you?" "We made a life. That was fortune enough." His smile faded. "Had a daughter 3 years later, Emma. She had Sarah's eyes, my stubbornness. Perfect combination." He paused, the next words harder. "Winter of '61, the snows came late and melted fast. Creek flooded, washed all kinds of things down from higher elevations. Dead animals, debris. Water got contaminated. Sarah and Emma both got sick." "Typhoid?" "Doctor thought so. I rode 2 days to fetch him, but a blizzard came in. By the time I got back," his voice broke. "Sarah was already gone. Held on long enough to tell me not to become stone, to stay human. Emma died 3 hours later. She was 5 years old." Ayasha's hand found his, squeezing gently. "I'm sorry. I buried them on a hillside. Dug the graves in frozen ground. Took me all night. Then I came up into these mountains and tried to forget how to feel anything." He looked at her. "Did a pretty good job of it, too, until I saw you kneeling in that square." "Why did you help me? Really?" Ezra considered the question. "You had a scar on your wrist, shaped like a crescent moon." Ayasha looked at her wrist, at the old scar she'd carried since childhood. I got it from a cooking fire when I was 6. Emma had one just like it. Same wrist, same shape. She got hers from barbed wire." He shook his head. "I know it doesn't mean anything, just coincidence. But when I saw it, I heard Sarah's voice in my head. Don't become stone. Stay human. And I thought maybe this is my chance. Maybe I can save someone this time." "You did save someone. You saved us both." "Haven't saved you yet. Not till Blackburn's dealt with." The baby stirred, making small mewling sounds. Ayasha began to rock her gently. "What happens after? If we survive? What do you want to happen?" "I want to go somewhere warm. Somewhere Sarah can grow up without people judging her for her blood. Somewhere we can just live." She looked at him. "Would you come with us? Be her father in truth, not just name." Ezra felt something shift in his chest, some locked door creaking open after 7 years. "Yes," he said, "I'd like that. Even though she's not yours? She is mine. The moment I delivered her, cut that cord, heard her first cry, she became mine." He met Ayasha's eyes, "And so did you." Ayasha leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a statement. Ezra froze for a moment, then kissed her back, and in that kiss was every promise neither of them dared speak aloud. When they pulled apart, both were crying. "We're going to survive this," Ayasha said fiercely. "We have to. For her." "We will," Ezra promised, and meant it with everything he had left. They left the valley before dawn on the 4th day. Ezra, Ayasha, Little Bear, and 2 Rivers, moving through the pre-dawn darkness like ghosts. Grey Wolf and 3 other Cherokee warriors accompanied them to the mouth of the valley, then turned back, taking the horses with them. "From here, you go on foot," 2 Rivers explained. "Horses leave too clear a trail. We need Blackburn to follow us, but we need to control where he follows us too." They moved through the forest, 2 Rivers and Little Bear in the lead, Ezra bringing up the rear with Ayasha between them. She carried Sarah in the sling, wrapped in layers of furs and blankets. The baby had been fed right before they left and now slept peacefully, unaware of the danger surrounding her. The terrain grew rougher as they traveled, the gentle slopes of the valley giving way to broken ridges and steep descents. Twice they had to climb down rock faces that would have been challenging for experienced mountaineers, let alone a woman 4 days post-birth. But Ayasha never complained, never asked to rest. She climbed when they climbed, crawled when they crawled, and when Ezra offered to carry the baby, she refused. "She's my strength," Ayasha said. "As long as I'm carrying her, I can do anything." By midday, they reached Devil's Throat. The canyon was exactly as Two Rivers had described it. A narrow cleft in the mountain, maybe 30 feet wide at the opening, with walls that rose 200 feet on either side. The canyon ran back about a quarter mile before ending in a sheer cliff face. A frozen stream occupied the center, its surface slick and treacherous. "This is it," Two Rivers said. "One way in, one way out. We set up at the back, force them to come through the narrows. They'll be exposed the whole way." Little Bear was already scouting the walls, finding handholds. "I can climb, get above them, rain arrows down." "How many arrows do you have?" Ezra asked. 20. "Make each one count." They spent the next 2 hours preparing the canyon. Ezra and Two Rivers positioned themselves behind a tumble of boulders at the far end, where they'd have clear firing lanes down the entire length. Little Bear found a ledge 20 feet up the north wall, with a narrow path that led to it. From there, he could shoot down at anyone trying to advance. Ayasha and the baby they placed in a small cave, barely more than a crack in the rock, hidden behind an outcropping. If things went badly, she was to run deeper into the mountains. Two Rivers had drawn her a map showing the way back to Grey Wolf's village. "I won't leave you," she'd protested. "You will if it means Sarah lives," Ezra had said, and something in his voice made it clear the discussion was over. Now they waited. The sun crawled across the sky. Ezra checked his weapons for the 100th time. Sharp's rifle, 30 rounds remaining. Colt revolver, 12 rounds. Bowie knife, freshly sharpened. Two Rivers had a Henry repeating rifle and a tomahawk. Little Bear had his bow and 20 arrows, against 12 soldiers with military training and modern weapons. The odds weren't good. "Tell me something," Two Rivers said as they waited. "When this is over, if we live, what will you do?" "Oregon," Ezra said. "There's a valley I heard about. Willamette. Good land. Warm winters. Figure I can build a cabin, start a farm, raise Sarah. Maybe give her some brothers and sisters." Two Rivers smiled. "You've thought about this?" "Past 3 days, it's all I've thought about." "Good. A man should have something to live for. Makes him fight harder." They fell silent again. The shadows lengthened. And then, just as the sun was touching the western peaks, they heard it. The sound of men moving through the forest, voices calling to each other, the jingle of equipment. They were coming. Blackburn emerged from the tree line first, sitting tall in his saddle despite the difficult terrain. Sergeant Webb rode beside him, and behind them came 9 more soldiers. They'd lost 3 men somewhere, either to desertion or accident. The colonel reined in at the mouth of the canyon, studying it with a tactician's eye. Even at 200 yards, Ezra could see the calculations happening behind those cold eyes. "It's a trap," Webb said, his voice carrying in the still air. "Has to be. They want us to follow them in there." "Of course it's a trap," Blackburn replied. "But they're cornered. Nowhere else to run. We've been chasing them for 4 days, and my patience is exhausted." He raised his voice. "Stone, I know you're in there. Send out the woman and child, and I'll let you and the others go free." Ezra didn't answer. "Think about it, Stone. You're not even related to her. Why die for a half-breed whore and her bastard?" Still no answer. Blackburn's face darkened. "Very well. Men, dismount. We're going in on foot. Webb, take 4 men up the left wall. See if you can get above them. The rest of you, with me. We advance in pairs, using the boulders for cover. Anyone who runs gets a bullet in the back." The soldiers dismounted and began checking their weapons. Ezra watched them through a gap in the rocks, his finger on the Sharp's trigger. Not yet. Let them commit. Let them get into the killing zone. Webb and his 4 men began climbing the left wall, finding purchase on narrow ledges and outcroppings. They were good, Ezra had to admit. Well-trained, but they were also exposed. Little Bear's first arrow took one of Webb's men in the throat. The soldier fell without a sound, tumbling down the cliff face to land in a broken heap on the canyon floor. All hell broke loose. "Sniper!" Webb screamed. "North wall, 20 feet up!" Rifles cracked, bullets spanging off the rock near Little Bear's position. But the young Apache had already moved, scrambling along the ledge with the agility of a mountain goat. His second arrow caught another soldier in the shoulder, spinning him around. The man lost his grip and fell, screaming all the way down. Blackburn and his 6 remaining men charged into the canyon, using the boulders for cover exactly as planned. They moved well, advancing in rushes, always keeping something between them and the presumed enemy position. Ezra let them get halfway before he fired. The sharps boomed like thunder in the narrow space. The heavy .52 caliber round took a soldier in the chest, punching through his coat and sending him sprawling backwards. Ezra was already reloading, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Two Rivers opened up with his Henry, the repeating rifle spitting fire and lead. 2 more soldiers went down in the first volley, one killed instantly, the other screaming and clutching his leg. "Fall back," Blackburn roared, "back to the entrance." But his men were pinned. Behind them was open ground with no cover. Ahead were the boulders where Ezra and 2 Rivers had positioned themselves. But reaching them meant crossing 40 feet of killing zone. They tried anyway. 3 soldiers made a run for it, firing as they ran. Ezra shot the first one, 2 Rivers the second. The third made it to cover, sliding behind a boulder 20 yards from Ezra's position. Little Bear's arrow found him a moment later, the shaft punching through his ribs from above. The soldier collapsed, gasping like a landed fish. That left Blackburn, Webb, and 3 soldiers. They'd retreated to the canyon mouth and were now using their horses as cover, firing blind around the animals' flanks. "We can wait them out," 2 Rivers said, reloading his Henry. "They can't stay there forever." But even as he spoke, Ezra saw Webb gesturing to the 2 soldiers on the left wall. They'd survived Little Bear's arrows and were now above the canyon, looking down at the Apache youth's position. "Little Bear," Ezra shouted, "above you!" The warning came too late. Both soldiers fired simultaneously. Little Bear jerked as the bullets hit him, one in the shoulder, one in the side. He tried to keep his grip on the ledge, but his wounded shoulder gave out. He fell, tumbling through the air, and landed hard on the canyon floor 30 feet below. "No!" Ayasha's scream echoed off the walls. She burst from her hiding place and ran to the fallen boy, heedless of the danger. "Ayasha, get back!" Ezra yelled, but she ignored him. Blackburn saw her. Even at this distance, Ezra saw the colonel's face transform from tactical concentration to something uglier, something hungry. "There she is!" Blackburn shouted. "Webb, suppressing fire! Keep their heads down!" Webb and the 3 remaining soldiers opened up, filling the air with lead. Bullets ricocheted off the boulders, protecting Ezra and 2 Rivers, forcing them to duck. Blackburn sprinted into the canyon, running for Ayasha's exposed position. He moved fast for a man in his 50s, covering ground with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades in military service. Ezra popped up, trying to draw a bead, but Webb's fire was too accurate. A bullet cracked past his ear, forcing him back down. 2 Rivers tried next, leaning out from the side of his boulder. He got a shot off, but it went wide. Return fire chewed up the rock inches from his head. Blackburn reached Ayasha. She was kneeling beside Little Bear, trying to stop the bleeding from his wounds. The baby, still in the sling, was crying now, the sound thin and desperate. The colonel grabbed Ayasha by the hair and dragged her upright. She screamed and clawed at his hand, but he was too strong. He pressed his pistol against her temple. "Cease fire," he roared. "Cease fire, or I kill her right now." The shooting stopped. In the sudden silence, Sarah's cries seemed impossibly loud. "Stone!" Blackburn called. 2 Rivers, I know you're back there. Come out. Hands empty, or I paint the rocks with her brains." Ezra and 2 Rivers looked at each other. The tracker's face was grim. "He's won," 2 Rivers said quietly. "We come out, he kills us all. We stay here, he kills her anyway." "There's a third option," Ezra said. "What?" "I go out, alone, draw his attention. You circle around, come at him from the side." "Stone, that's suicide." "You have a better idea?" 2 Rivers was silent. Ezra checked his Colt one last time, then stepped out from behind the boulder, hands raised. "Let her go, Blackburn." The colonel's face twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. "The mountain man, finally showing your face." He pressed the gun harder against Ayasha's head. "Drop your weapons. All of them, or she dies. Ezra unbuckled his gun belt and let it fall, pulled the Bowie knife from its sheath and tossed it aside. Now walk forward, slowly, stop 10 feet away. Ezra obeyed, moving with careful deliberation. Around him, the canyon walls seemed to lean in, the shadows deepening as the sun sank lower. He could see Ayasha's face clearly now. She wasn't crying, her eyes were locked on his, trying to communicate something. Behind Blackburn, Webb and his men had stopped firing. They stood at the canyon mouth, weapons ready but not aimed. One of them looked uncomfortable, like he was starting to question what they were doing here. "You should have walked away, Stone," Blackburn said. "In Salvation Ridge, when you had the chance, none of this had to happen. Let her go, your fight's with me. My fight is with everyone who defies me." Spittle flew from the colonel's mouth. "Do you have any idea what this has cost me? 4 men dead, 3 more deserted. And for what? For this." He shook Ayasha like a rag doll. "This half-breed witch and her tainted whelp." "She's your daughter," Ezra said quietly. Blackburn froze. Behind him, the 3 soldiers shifted nervously. Webb's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "She's your daughter," Ezra said quietly. Blackburn froze. Behind him, the 3 soldiers shifted nervously. Webb's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "She's your daughter. You raped her mother 27 years ago. Apache woman named Marisol. Fort Defiance, 1841. Ezra's voice was steady, relentless. "You kept her prisoner for 3 months. When she got pregnant, you dumped her at a trading post and told everyone she tried to seduce you. She died 2 days after giving birth, alone and bleeding." "That's a lie!" Blackbird's voice cracked. Ayasha spoke then, her voice cutting through the cold air like a blade. "My mother's last words were written in a letter. She said, 'Tell Josiah I forgive him. Tell him I kept the blue scarf.'" Blackburn's face went white as snow. "No, you couldn't. How do you—" "The scarf you gave her," Ayasha continued, her dark eyes boring into his. "Blue silk. You told her it matched the New Mexico sky. She was wearing it when she bled to death. I still have it." "Marisol." Blackburn whispered the name like a prayer and a curse. His gun hand was shaking now. One of the soldiers lowered his rifle. "Colonel, is this true?" "It's a lie, all lies." But tears were streaming down Blackburn's weathered face. "I never— She wasn't supposed to— Marisol was just what?" Ayasha demanded. "Just a savage? Just a woman you could use and throw away?" "She was beautiful," Blackburn choked out. "God help me, she was beautiful. And I was young and stupid, and I thought it didn't matter, that it would just disappear. But I didn't disappear," Ayasha said softly. "Neither did your guilt. Why? Because your men might hear the truth? Because they might realize they've been hunting an innocent woman on the orders of a rapist and a coward?" "I said shut up. You going to shoot me, Colonel? Go ahead. But these men will remember. They'll remember you held a gun to your own daughter's head. They'll remember you called your granddaughter a mongrel. That kind of thing gets around." One of the soldiers spoke up. "Colonel, is this true? Is she really—" "It's a lie," Blackburn screamed. "All lies. This man is wanted for murder in Missouri. He'd say anything to save himself." "Then prove it," Ezra said. "Look at her. Really look. You see her mother's face, don't you? Marisol, the woman you raped and abandoned. She's staring at you through your daughter's eyes." Blackburn looked at Ayasha, and for just a moment his face crumpled. The hardness fell away, leaving behind something old and broken and terrified. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I never wanted— She was supposed to die. They both were. The mother, the child. I paid people to make sure. But they survived, and I couldn't— His hand was shaking. The pistol wavered against Ayasha's temple. "Let her go," Ezra said softly. "It's not too late. You can still—" "It's been too late for 27 years." Blackburn pulled the trigger. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. In the case of the running fight, in his rage and desperation, the colonel had forgotten to reload after firing at Ezra earlier. The pistol was empty. Ayasha moved. She twisted in his grip, bringing her elbow up hard into his throat. Blackburn gagged and released her, stumbling backward. Two Rivers appeared from behind a boulder, his rifle trained on the Curnio. Don't move! But Blackburn was already moving. He drew a second pistol from inside his coat, this one loaded. He swung it toward Ayasha. Ezra was faster. He covered the 10 feet between them in 3 strides and hit Blackburn like a freight train. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs. The pistol fired, the bullet going wild, ricocheting off the canyon wall. They rolled across the frozen ground, each trying to gain the advantage. Blackburn was older, but he was trained, and desperation made him strong. He got on top, bringing the pistol around. Ezra caught his wrist with both hands, holding the gun away. They strained against each other, muscles trembling with effort. Should have walked away, Blackburn panted. Should have left her to die. Never, Ezra growled. Behind them, Webb and the remaining soldiers were shouting, trying to get a clear shot. But Ayasha had grabbed Ezra's dropped pistol and was covering them. Her hands were steady, her aim unwavering. Drop your weapons, she commanded, or I start shooting. The soldiers hesitated. Webb raised his rifle, but Two Rivers fired first, the bullet kicking up snow at the sergeant's feet. Next one takes your head off, the tracker promised. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Ezra and Blackburn were still locked together. The colonel was tiring, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Ezra could feel the man's strength fading. Wait, Blackburn gasped. Why couldn't you just let it go? Because, Ezra said through gritted teeth, she deserves to live. Her daughter deserves to live. And you don't get to take that from them. With a final surge of effort, Ezra twisted Blackburn's wrist. The bones snapped with an audible crack. The colonel screamed, and the pistol fell from nerveless fingers. Ezra rolled away and stood, breathing hard. He picked up the pistol and pointed it at Blackburn's head. The colonel looked up at him, and in his eyes was something Ezra had seen in a mirror for 7 years. The look of a man who'd lost everything and knew it. Do it, Blackburn said. End it. I'm finished anyway. My career, my reputation, everything. Dead man walking. Ezra's finger tightened on the trigger. It would be so easy. One shot. Justice for Marisol, for Ayasha, for all the others Blackburn had heard over his career. But he thought of Sarah, of her last words. Don't become stone. Stay human. And he thought of little Sarah crying in her mother's arms, needing a father who wasn't a killer. Ezra lowered the gun. No, he said. You get to live. But you're done here. You're going to walk back to Fort Garland. You're going to resign your commission. Tell them health reasons. Tell them anything you want. But you're done giving orders. Done hurting people. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper only Blackburn could hear. And if I ever see you again, if I ever hear you've gone near Ayasha or Sarah, I will find you. I will hunt you down like the animal you are, and I won't hesitate a second time. We clear? Blackburn nodded, broken. Ezra turned to Webb and the soldiers. You 3, pick up your dead, take your colonel, get out of here. And if I were you, I'd forget everything you saw today. Stone threw himself at armed soldiers, tragic accident, body lost in the mountains. That's the story. Stick to it. Webb looked at his men, then at Blackburn, then back at Ezra. Something like respect flickered across his face. Yes, sir, he said, then to his men. You heard him. Gather the dead. We're going home. It took them an hour to collect the bodies and prepare to leave. Blackburn sat on a rock, cradling his broken wrist, not speaking. His eyes were distant, looking at something only he could see. As they were leaving, Webb stopped beside Ezra. For what it's worth, the sergeant said quietly, I'm sorry, we all are. This shouldn't have happened. But it did. Yeah, it did. Webb glanced back at Blackburn. He's finished, you know. Even if we tell the story you want, people will talk. Questions will be asked. By spring, he'll be lucky if he's not court-martialed. Good. Webb nodded and walked away, following his men and their grim cargo out of the canyon. When they were gone, Ezra went to Little Bear. Ayasha was still kneeling beside her cousin, but her efforts to stop the bleeding had been successful. The boy was unconscious, but breathing. He'll live, Two Rivers said, having checked the wounds. Shoulders clean through, missed the bone. Side wound is shallow. He was lucky. We were all lucky, Ayasha said. She looked at Ezra, and in her eyes was everything words couldn't express. "Thank you for not killing him. I know you wanted to." "Wanted to," Ezra admitted, "but it wouldn't have changed anything, and Sarah doesn't need a killer for a father." "She already has a father," Ayasha said softly. "The best kind, one who chooses mercy when it costs him." They carried Little Bear back to Grey Wolf's village. It took them most of the night, but when they arrived at dawn, the Cherokee welcomed them like returning heroes. The women took charge of Little Bear, tending his wounds with practiced skill. Grey Wolf himself helped settle them in a cabin. "So," the elder said, "it is done?" "It's done," Ezra confirmed. "And what now? Will you stay with us?" Ezra looked at Ayasha, a question in his eyes. She smiled and nodded. "We'd like to," he said. "For the winter at least, if you'll have us. Come spring, we're thinking of heading to Oregon. Fresh start, new life. But we'd be grateful for a place to rest until then." "You have it," Grey Wolf said. "And when spring comes, some of my people may join you. We grow tired of hiding. Perhaps in Oregon, we can live free." Over the next weeks, as winter settled in hard and deep, they healed. Little Bear's wounds closed clean, leaving him with scars he wore proudly. Ayasha regained her strength, and Sarah grew fat and healthy on her mother's milk. And Ezra, for the first time in 7 years, felt something like peace. He and Ayasha were married by Cherokee custom in a ceremony under the winter stars. Grey Wolf presided, speaking words in his language that Ezra didn't understand but felt in his bones. Ayasha wore a dress of white doeskin decorated with beadwork. Ezra wore his cleanest shirt and had trimmed his beard for the occasion. When Grey Wolf placed their hands together and wrapped them with a woven cord, Ezra looked into Ayasha's eyes and saw his future. Saw Oregon, saw a cabin by a river, saw Sarah growing up strong and free. Saw more children, a mix of his and Ayasha's blood, growing up together. Saw a life worth living. That night, lying together in their cabin, with Sarah sleeping in a cradle Ezra had carved himself, Ayasha spoke into the darkness. "Do you ever think about them? Your first family?" "Every day," Ezra admitted. "But it's different now. Before, it was all pain and guilt. Now," he searched for the words, "now it's gratitude. For the time we had, for what they taught me, for leading me to you." "You think they led you to me?" "I know they did. Sarah told me not to become stone, to stay human, and the day I saw you in that square, I heard her voice clear as day. She was giving me permission to live again, to love again." He pulled Ayasha closer. "I'll always love them. Part of me will always be their husband, their father. But I can be your husband too, Sarah's father. I'm big enough for both." Ayasha kissed him. "I know you are. That's why I love you." They made love slowly, carefully, aware of her still healing body, and afterward they lay tangled together, listening to the winter wind howl outside and their daughter's soft breathing, and felt blessed. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought warmth and hope. The snow melted, revealing green grass and wildflowers. The Cherokee packed their belongings, and a group of 15, including Grey Wolf, chose to make the journey west. They left on a clear morning in late April. Ezra rode Ash, with Ayasha behind him and Sarah, now 6 months old, strapped to her mother's chest. Little Bear, fully recovered, rode beside them, his bow across his back. Two Rivers and Grey Wolf led the group, following ancient paths through the mountains. The journey took 6 weeks. They crossed the Continental Divide, descended into desert lands, climbed again through pine forests, and finally dropped down into the broad green valley of the Willamette. It was everything Ezra had hoped for, warm, fertile, with water and timber in abundance. They found unclaimed land along a tributary of the Willamette River and began building. By fall, they had 5 cabins completed, with more under construction. They planted late crops, hunted deer and elk, fished the river, and slowly, carefully, they built a community. Word spread of the settlement. Other Cherokee came, escaping the reservations. A few white families arrived, drawn by stories of good land and tolerance. Mexicans, freed slaves, Chinese railroad workers who'd had enough of brutal labor. All the unwanted, the cast out, the running. They were all welcome. Ezra built a large cabin for his family, 2 rooms with a sleeping loft and a real glass window he'd traded a year's worth of furs to obtain. He built Sarah a cradle, then a small bed. He made toys, carved animals, taught her to recognize tracks in the mud, and when Ayasha told him she was pregnant again, he wept with joy. Their son was born in the spring of 1870. They named him Jacob, and he had Ezra's gray eyes and skin that bronzed beautifully in the summer sun. 2 years later came another daughter, Emma, named for Ezra's first daughter. She had blonde hair, a throwback to some distant ancestor, and everyone agreed she was the image of her namesake. Life wasn't easy. There were hard winters, crop failures, sickness. They lost 2 children to fever, twins who never saw their first birthday. But they endured and the community grew stronger. In 1875, mail service reached the valley. With it came news from the outside world. The Indian Wars were winding down. The army was pulling back from the frontier. And in a small notice that Ezra almost missed, there was mention of a former colonel named Josiah Blackburn who had died of apoplexy in a San Francisco boarding house. He'd been 62, lone and penniless. Ezra showed the notice to Ayasha. She read it without expression, then handed it back. "I feel nothing," she said. "Is that wrong?" "No, he was your father by blood, but he was never your father in any way that mattered. You don't owe him grief." She nodded, then went back to tending the garden, where Sarah was playing with her younger siblings. That evening, Ezra sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun set over the valley. He was 45 years old now. His beard was shot through with gray. His hands bore the calluses and scars of a working man, but his eyes, when he looked at his family, were warm. Sarah, now 7, was teaching Jacob and Emma a song in Apache. Little Bear, who'd built his own cabin nearby and married a Cherokee woman named Morning Star, was showing a group of young boys how to make arrows. Gray Wolf sat in a rocking chair 2 Rivers had built for him, smoking a pipe and watching the children play. Ayasha came out and sat beside Ezra, leaning against his shoulder. "Happy?" she asked. "Yes." "No regrets?" He thought about it, thought about the cabin in Missouri, the graves on the hillside, 7 years of self-imposed exile. Thought about the choice he'd made in Salvation Ridge to help a stranger who needed him. "No regrets," he said. "Every step, every choice led me here, to you, to them." He gestured at the valley, at the community they'd built. "This is what Sarah meant when she told me to stay human. This, family, community, love, she knew I'd find my way back eventually. Tell me about her again. Your Sarah." So he did. He told Ayasha about his first wife, about Emma, about the good years and the tragic end. And as he spoke, he felt no pain, only gratitude for what had been and what was now. Night fell over the valley. Lights appeared in cabin windows. The smell of cooking fires drifted on the breeze. Children's laughter echoed off the surrounding hills. And Ezra Stone, mountain man, widower, father twice over, finally understood what redemption felt like. It felt like home. 15 years later, in the winter of 1884, Ezra sat in that same rocking chair on that same porch. He was 60 now, his beard completely white, his body bent with arthritis and old injuries. But his mind was sharp and his heart was full. Sarah, now 22, was married to a school teacher from Portland. She was pregnant with her first child, making Ezra a grandfather. Jacob, 19, was apprenticing with a carpenter in town. Emma, 17, was courting a young Cherokee man despite Ezra's grumbling. And there was another daughter, Marisol, named for Ayasha's mother, who was 12 and as wild as her mother had been. Ayasha, now 51, still beautiful despite the gray in her hair and the lines around her eyes, brought him a blanket. "You'll catch your death, old man," she said, draping it over his shoulders. "I've survived worse than a little cold." She sat beside him and they watched the snow fall, fat white flakes that covered the valley in silence. "Do you ever think about that day?" Ayasha asked. "In Salvation Ridge?" "Sometimes." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd just ridden past?" Ezra was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "No," he said, "because I didn't ride past. I stopped. I helped. And everything good in my life came from that choice." He took her hand. "Some men spend their whole lives looking for purpose. I found mine in a town square, kneeling in the snow. Ayasha leaned her head on his shoulder. My mountain man. Your mountain man, he agreed. They sat together as darkness fell, as the snow continued to fall, as their children and grandchildren moved about the cabin preparing dinner. And Ezra thought about the long, strange road that had led him here, from Missouri to Colorado to Oregon, from grief to love to peace. He thought about Sarah, his first wife, and hoped she could see what he'd become. Hoped she was proud. And he thought about the covenant he'd made, not with words but with actions. The promise to stay human, to choose mercy, to build rather than destroy. It was a covenant he'd keep for the rest of his days. The snow fell, the fire crackled, his family laughed. And Ezra Stone, who'd been dead for 7 years and then chose to live again, finally understood the true meaning of grace. It wasn't the absence of pain. It was the courage to love again despite it. It was the strength to carry someone home through winter dark. It was the wisdom to choose mercy when vengeance would have been easier. It was all of this and more, woven together into a life worth living. His life, their life, and he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The end.